The Kennedy Imprisonment, A Meditation on Power, by Garry describes and analyzes the immense power of the Kennedy family, stemming from the father, Joseph Sr., and then branching out into a social and political sphere of influence, set apart, much like a self-proclaimed aristocracy. This social stratosphere was composed not only of those born into the Kennedy family, but also loyal friends and advisors, or as Wills calls them, honorary Kennedys. Wills develops an argument throughout the work, asserting that the power of the Kennedys attracted a crowd of followers, and as the family continued allowing more and more people into their circle of power and loyalty, the crowd became too large and influential that it slowly began to trap and suffocate its central figures, particularly Edward Kennedy, who had just lost the presidential election in 1980, the year before the book was written. Wills places a strong emphasis on the Kennedys' love for power, used and abused in remarkable ways. He shows admiration for the intelligence and ability of the Kennedys and their administration, while subtly criticizing their morals and reflecting on the inevitable collapse of the Kennedy reign. He does so by analyzing categorized aspects of the family and its actions. His goal is to inform the general public of the powerful influence the Kennedys had while analyzing its causes and effects in politics and within the family's circle of friends. Wills separates this book into 5 distinct parts: sex, family, image, charisma, and power. In all of these parts of the book, he begins by discussing Joseph Kennedy Sr. and his part in developing the Kennedys, influencing their views of sex, forming their extremely tight family bond, creating the Kennedy image, building and encouraging the family's charisma, and working to gain the overwhelming power his family came to have. In each case, Wills moves on to demonstrate John Kennedy's continuation of his father's legacy. He describes the ways in which John upholds and imitates many of his father's morals and values, such as his love of England over his own Irish heritage, his similar attitude and charm towards women, his love for and closeness with the family, and his continuing to improve and develop the family image and influence through growing power in politics and manipulation. Wills then continues by analyzing Robert Kennedy's actions. He shows how Robert embodies many of the Kennedy values, but in a new way, more reserved, but just as determined. Robert showed a fierce spirit to uphold the family image and power, but did so with less controversy and more class than his father and brother. For instance, he was very faithful, both to his Catholic religion and to his wife, in contrast with Joseph and John, who seemed to have a new date every night, despite their marriages, and who also did not attend church or demonstrate highly Catholic values. To close each section of the book, Wills included a chapter about the so-called prisoners of the Kennedys' sex, family, image, charisma, and power. He especially highlights Edward Kennedy, who often had to take caution in his actions due to the actions of his family in the past, as he did not wish to taint the family name or his own by fitting the stereotypical, overly seductive Kennedy, for instance. As the Kennedy family, by his time flooded with honorary Kennedys, began to pull him in every which way, he failed to live up to his brother's displays of the Kennedy image of charisma and delightfully powerful spirit. It's noted by Wills that Edward eventually felt that he had no option but to run for president to uphold his family name and maintain the power and privilege to which he'd become so accustomed. Wills also shows how the women in the family became imprisoned by the suffocating expectations and attention the Kennedys faced. Wives of the Kennedys were forced to put up a brave front, dismissing any rumors that could harm the image of the Kennedy family, and in some instances, working behind the scenes to make the rumors disappear. Rose Kennedy, wife of Joseph Sr. and mother to their 9 children, was forced to pretend that she didn't know of her husband's constant sexual activities, even though it became clear that the rest of the nation knew. This kind of obligation to the family image pushed others within the Kennedy influence to make exceptions to laws, allow censoring of publication, and promote the increase of an individual's power in the government, most notably during John Kennedy's presidency. Wills justifies his thesis effectively and very persuasively through strong and specific evidence. He also provides proof that he has not only researched the Kennedys, but also those who associated with the Kennedys. He does so through his abundant use of direct quotes from Kennedy acquaintances as well as the Kennedys themselves. He also displays personal knowledge and experience with the Kennedys, not as a close friend, but as someone who has met them a few times. Wills also includes a bibliography with a fairly large number of works, some by friends of his who he refers to throughout the book. The fact that he read other analytical works on the subject suggests that he has taken into account a multitude of viewpoints, making his point of view encompass details from a variety of perspectives, which adds to the legitimacy of his claims. This evidence of Wills' development of knowledge provides a very firm foundation for his argument, filled with so much fact that it becomes difficult for his audience to object to anything he says. In many cases, Wills creates an entire recall of an event through accounts of people involved, and provides so many quotations and facts that when he states his own conclusions, they appear to be solid fact as well, despite his sometimes shaky logic. But obviously, many conclusions he draws can be argued, much as any theory behind politicians' thought processes. What Wills does flawlessly is portray his conclusions as indisputable, almost forcing the audience to buy into them. Often, though, when reflecting on an idea presented in the book, it can be seen that the seemingly logical reasoning actually leaves some questions to be answered, as it isn't always clear how exactly Will has reached his conclusions. Much of his logic relies on implication as well, making the reader feel as if they're drawing their own conclusions from the evidence, when actually, Wills is manipulating their thought process to match his own. In much of the reasoning Wills presents in the Kennedy Imprisonment, he displays a sort of skepticism and doubt towards the true intentions of the Kennedys, though his descriptions of the family and its members' actions show clear admiration for their control in politics and in their social sphere. For instance, in regard to the Chappaquiddick incident involving the youngest Kennedy, Edward, Wills takes the position assumed by most Americans familiar with the story. With Edward's lack of explanation for the night his female friend died, Wills asserts that Kennedy's guilt in the matter is highly likely. His opinion on this guilt isn't described in bitterness, but rather in awe of the fact that Kennedy, in his family's power, was able to get away with everything, practically untouched. Also, he points out that Robert gave little attention to the assassination of his brother, John Kennedy. Wills declares that this is because Robert had something to hide, specifically secret actions by both Robert and John involving the Cuban government, actions that he feared could taint the Kennedy family name. But Wills does not condemn this decision by Kennedy. Rather, he highlights the loyalty he shows in keeping the family name pure. The Kennedy Imprisonment does indeed offer an interesting look into the American dynasty of the Kennedy family, but would not suffice in a study of the Kennedys' politics or family life. As many critics have called it brilliant, intelligent, and hard to put down, the book is certainly entertaining and incredibly written, but it leaves a lot about the Kennedys out. Obviously, as any author working to prove a point does, Wills focuses on information that supports his thesis. This leads to a great amount of attention paid to certain details of the Kennedys, but also the exclusion of other aspects of the family. Though this doesn't affect the validity of the book, it does create a limited view of the Kennedy family. Nevertheless, the Kennedy Imprisonment is still a wonderful look into the Kennedys' ideas and use of power in American politics. fit to be enjoyed by any student, aspiring historian, or casual reader.